What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. What you just witnessed was the last time that this little 4.3 is going to run inside of this 2007 Silverado Classic. If you've been here, you know I bought this truck a little while ago, and I really like the truck. I've already done some upgrades on the interior, the suspension. Not really an upgrade on the suspension, but it's time to correct the drivetrain issue in this thing. And I had a huge response from the previous V6 to V8 conversion I did on my friend Alan's truck. So I figured I'd give you a little bit more detail, go a little bit more into depth on this one, and help you out. If you have a little V6 single cab short bed with a 4.3 V6, I'm going to show you how to convert it to a V8. And I'll try to cover all the points, even if yours isn't the exact same as mine. Lots of these trucks came with a 4.3 V6. And there's a few nuances, but converting them to V8, it really isn't that difficult. You got to remember, GM platform built these trucks. So they're designed with the intention of someone being able to follow basic instructions and put whatever drivetrain into it that the truck was ordered with. And we're going to take advantage of that to convert it from V6 to a 5.3 V8. And I think first step is I'll show you the parts that I've acquired, accumulated, and gathered in order to do this job. All right, so let's talk about some of the nuances of converting from the 4.3 V6 to a V8, whether it's a 4.8, 5.3, or a 6.0, any Gen 3 V8 to match up with the body style of the truck, right? So the first thing you need to consider is, from the 99 to 07 Classic trucks, all of those 4.3 V6 engines are drive-by cable engines, meaning that there's a physical connection between the throttle pedal and the throttle on the engine. There's a cable that links them together. When you push the pedal, it pulls the throttle open. Now, GM stopped using a drive-by cable throttle on the V8 engines in 2002. So in 2003, and even some of the higher trim 2002, like the Denali's and Escalades, Corvettes, even in 2002, those engines were coming with a drive-by-wire throttle body. And in 2003, all of the V8s went to a drive-by-wire throttle body, meaning no mechanical connection. It's all done. You push the pedal, sends a signal to the PCM. The PCM then sends a signal and opens the throttle body. Now, the reason this is important is obviously you need to be able to control the throttle. And depending on which swap you're going to do, there are some that are more straightforward. There are some that are less straightforward. In 2003, it gets less simple, because in 2003, GM went to a CAN bus communication system in the electronics. They also made a lot of other electronic changes in the trucks. So you could put a drive-by cable V8 into an 03 or newer truck. However, you're going to have to do some more electronic figuring out to make it all work together, because the 99 to 02 computer is not going to be happy with the rest of the 03 to 07 Classic electronics. You're going to have to do, it's a lot more figuring out as far as electrical wiring, even the air conditioning. Now, to swap an 03 to 07 Classic drive-by-wire V8 into these trucks, my best advice is match up the years as closely as you can. 03 to 05 and the lower trim trucks, the electronics are pretty much all the same. If not the same, they're very, very similar, okay? And you won't have too much figuring out to do as far as, oh, will this fuse panel work with the stock fuse panel? With the computer, will the PCM talk to the BCM? All that sort of stuff. That 03 to 05 window, they're pretty much all the same. Now, the hazard to look out for in 03 to 05, specifically in 05, is in the later part of 2005, GM added what they call the ground battery control module. And it's this little black module here. It wraps around your ground cable going to the battery. And then there's a connector that plugs into it and runs into the PCM harness. If you're starting with a truck that had a ground battery control module, I really, really recommend you try to swap in an engine and computer wire harness that still has a ground battery control module. There's some communication between that module, the instrument cluster, and the PCM. And if it originally had that module and you don't put one back in there, it's going to set your battery light in the gauge cluster. It's a mess to try to get it turned off. So try to avoid that pitfall. Now, if you have something that didn't originally have a ground battery control module, you can put something in that has it. It's not going to hurt anything, but you don't want to start off with a truck that had it and then get rid of it. What else to talk about here? Straight up, simple swap, basic compatibility, right? So if you have a 99 to 2002 V6 truck, try to find yourself a 99 to 2002 V8 engine. That's going to be a very straightforward remove and replace, a little bit of anti-theft removal in the computer, just because it won't recognize the steering column in the truck, and you should be good to go. Now, 03 to 05, if your truck is an 03 to 05 without a ground battery control module, the least electronic wizardry is going to be a 2003 to 2005 engine, computer, and harness. The only added challenge you're going to have is swapping out the throttle pedal bracket. You'll have to remove the throttle pedal that's original to the truck and install your drive-by-wire throttle pedal bracket. That's how I'm going to do it. That's going to make it look the most clean. You don't even have to do it that way. The throttle pedals, they just bolt to the firewall. So even if you wanted to just take out the stock mechanical throttle pedal and self-tapping screw your throttle pedal into the firewall, if you're not worried about it appearing factory, that would work to get your drive-by-wire throttle pedal in there. And then the third variation is going to be your 2005 to 2007 classic pickup with a V6 that had the ground battery control module. You're going to want to find a 2005 to 2007 classic V8 that had the ground battery control module. And then same deal. You're just going to have to convert your throttle pedal from the mechanical one in the truck to the electronic one that runs the engine. And those are just, in my opinion, the least complicated ways to do this. There's a million ways you can get this done. Any problem can be figured out with time, sometimes money. But if you're trying to make this, if you're trying to swap your own truck, you want to hit as few pitfalls as possible, the first thing is start with the right pieces, right? In my particular circumstance, what we're doing this time, the truck is a 2007 Silverado Classic with a V6, obviously. And what I'm swapping into it is an L33 from a 2006 Silverado. Now, electronically, 2006 and 2007 Classic, everything is the same. They all had the ground battery control module. The PCMs all communicate and talk to each other. They get along with the body control module, all the other stuff. And the drive-by-wire throttle in 06 and 07 is the same. 2005 used a different drive-by-wire throttle pedal, so that's just something else to keep in mind. I have my donor engine is from a donor truck. The reason I'm using this one is, one, I want to find out, I've read on the internet that the L33 actually weighs less than the 4.3 V6. The L33 is it's the high output aluminum block 5.3 engine. They only came in 2005, 2006, and 2007 classic Sierra and Silverado extended cab short bed pickups. Part of why I've chosen this specific one is because it came out of a truck I parted out, and it's a remanufactured engine. It still has the barcodes on it and the heat tags on the sides of the block that the manufacturer put on. The truck itself only had 180,000 miles on it, so I suspect this is a really low mileage donor engine. And it seems it ran really well in the truck. There's no other issues with it as far as I can tell. So I think this is going to be the least amount of actual engine work to do to get it into the truck, get it running, so on and so forth. I kept the factory PCM, factory throttle pedal, ground battery control module. I disconnected all of the plugs that go together under the fuse panel. In my case, these should match up with the plugs that are already under the fuse panel because, like I said, 06, 07, electronically, they're the same. My AC compressor, still the one from the truck on here. I've saved the air conditioning lines from the donor truck. For lack of a better way to say it and to try to keep this relatively brief, get as much from the donor truck, if you have a donor truck, as you can. And think about the things that connect to the truck also, right? So your radiator hoses, your AC lines. I also have the radiator over here. This is actually a radiator from another truck. I'll explain why I picked that one later in another video. But the radiator, your intake plumbing to the throttle body, the power steering pump, all that stuff. All the things that connect engine to truck, most of them are different between the V6 and the V8. So if you can get them from your donor, it'll save you having to buy new parts. You'll also know that you have ones that work. The parts that are actually part of the truck, the AC evaporator, the AC dryer, those are the same between the V6 and the V8 trucks, most of them. But the parts that actually connect them, hoses, wires, lines, etc., that stuff is different. So I feel like I've been kind of rambling and I dropped a lot of information in a short period of time there. So let's get to work on this thing. First step, obviously, disconnect the battery, drain all the fluids, and then pull the engine out. I'm going to spare you from watching all of that stuff. You know, the magic of YouTube to your benefit is in a few seconds, the engine will be out and we'll be getting ready to talk about some more differences. Bam! Engine out. So it's just your standard 4.3 iron head, iron block, exhaust manifolds, blah, blah, blah. Nothing fancy about this engine. And a two-wheel drive 4L60E. So, one of the other things to be conscious of is what transmission you're planning on using. Now, I want this to be like, my intention here is to show as low budget and simple a swap as possible. So I'm going to keep the 4L60E. I know I can already read the comments. You should have gone to 4L80E, blah, 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 blah. This transmission works just fine. These 4L60Es live for hundreds of thousands of miles behind 5.3s in factory trucks. I'm not planning on any power adders to this engine. Like, it's just going to be a stock 5.3 L33. So this transmission should be fine. There is one difference here, that it has the torque converter is intended for the 4.3, obviously. I'm sure the stall speed is not the same as a 5.3 torque converter is. This is not a daily driver for me. It's a drive it when I feel like it truck, so I'm not worried about the stall speed. I'm sure the stall will be just fine with the 5.3. It's not going to like bog the engine or anything like that, because if anything, this 4.3 makes less torque than that 5.3 does, so it should be fine. So the next thing I'm going to do, and this is totally up to you, but I am going to ditch the mouse bedding here on the firewall. That's all that ever ends up being, is mouse bedding. And then I'm going to get the transmission separated from the engine. Now, one thing to note here is the fuel lines. So the factory fuel lines, it's all one piece. From these connectors mount on the fuel tank, it's one piece along the frame rail. The little flexible portion here is crimped to the steel, runs up along the transmission right up to here. Now, the nice thing about this is these fuel lines, the fuel line and the evap purge line are close enough to the location of a 5.3 fuel line and purge line that they'll work with this engine. I don't need to try to source. In fact, last time I looked, you can't even get like a stock replacement fuel line anymore. Everybody makes aftermarket ones because these are really, really difficult to get in and out of the truck in one piece. Mine are in good enough condition. I only need this engine. I'm only planning on having this engine in the truck until winter when I park it, and then I'm going to build another engine to put into it. That'll be a later series. So I'll be able to reuse the factory 4.3 fuel lines. I'll reuse the factory transmission mount. It's in good shape. The truck only had 130,000 miles on it, so it's not a crazy high mileage truck. Now, as far as getting the engine in, the motor mounts drop right in, except for the driver's side. The 4.3 driver's side motor mount bracket is different. It's 2 bolts to remove it, and then I'll put the correct one for the V8 in. Now, the previous owner put stainless brake lines in this truck, which is nice, but they didn't do a great job, so I'm going to try to tidy that up a little bit. And I also want to just pressure wash and clean out this engine compartment. You know, it's a 17-year-old truck. It's got grime, gook, whatever else in there, so I'm going to pressure wash it off. I'm going to get the transmission cleaned off. I'm going to get the engine cleaned off first. But I think that's all going to come in a separate video. I'm going to wrap this one up by getting this transmission separated from the engine, and then I want to weigh the engine and see what the engine actually weighs by itself. And we'll put the air intake box on it too, just because, you know, that's part of the engine assembly and it's different. So yeah, I think that's it for now. All right, everybody, transmission separated. Fairly straightforward, just like peeling them off of a V8. No big deal there. I've got the engine. Now this is a 4.3 iron block, iron head. Still has all the accessories on it. Still has the engine oil in it. The exhaust manifolds. So basically ready to run condition. Starter, flywheel, flex plate rather, blah, 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 blah. Like PCM. Everything that this engine needs to run here. And it weighs in right at 529 and a half to 500. Is it 530? Let's call it 530. That's easy to remember. 530 pounds. Which I'm fairly confident an aluminum block LS weighs less than that. So we'll see. But there we go. She's out, she's separated, and yeah, I think I'm calling it for this video, everybody. It's the first little bits of this. Some information for you about choosing the right donor for what you're swapping it into. And yeah, now I have a bunch of cleaning to do and prep work. But that's not super exciting, so I'll bring it back on the next video when we start putting things together. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. And until the next video, take care.